Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And in this update, we are going to check out QNT's price chart and see what is happening in the short term. And I think we are starting to cook something special. But before we get into all that, I think we are actually having some much more important stuff to talk about, because it seems like that a lot of whales are actually buying the dip in an insane amount in QNT. That is, I think, pretty much unheard of. First things first, you should absolutely 100% give Mind Crypto a follow. He provides wonderful content about QNT. And if you want to know whether whales are buying or not, if you want to know actually more details on transactions, I believe Mind Crypto is your guy. And also, while you're at it, you should, in my view, definitely give Sebastian a follow as well. He also provides wonderful content about QNT. Now, according to Mind Crypto, it seems like that in the last couple of days, we are just having some insane transactions. And for example, in this post, he said these are transactions from Coinbase to private wallets of about 2,600 QNT. And this specific wallet has accumulated over 48,000 token in just the last 30 days. And it's not actually only this one. We also had, I think it was like 10-15 days ago, couple of other wallets accumulating Quant big time. And this wallet, I think in the next post, where is it? I swear to God, I had it saved. Yes, it's actually this one. There we go. This wallet actually continued just adding more and more QNT to its portfolio. This time they added about 2,800 QNT. And in total, they have about 51,000 token, which is really insane. That is about, let's say, about just a bit less than 0.5% of the total supply. Now, if you think this doesn't really get any crazier than this, well, may I suggest think again, because in total, according to Mind Crypto, we had about 28 transactions moving from Coinbase to Coinbase Prime, totaling about 170,000 QNT token. And also we had a further 17 transactions from Coinbase to private wallets, totaling about 180,000 QNT. And again, all of these things, which if you combine them, it's about 350,000 token. All of these things just happened in the last couple of days. And let me be very clear, I do not believe this is actually bear market behavior. I think something is happening behind the scenes that you and I don't really know. And also, I'm going to speculate a little bit, and I'm going to tell you why. I don't really think that they even want us to know what is going on behind the scenes, because I think they just want to accumulate more and more QNT token. But one way or the other, I think the spring in here is absolutely compressed, and we are going to see, hopefully soon, some massive explosions on Quant's chart. Now, here's something interesting. You see, when you look at this on-chain activity, the first thing that absolutely stands out is the movement from Coinbase to Coinbase Prime, and this is where things get quite exciting. You see, in case you don't know, Coinbase is basically one place where a lot of traders keep their coins. And by traders, we are talking about people who buy, sell, and move in and out of their positions rather quickly. But Coinbase Prime, on the other hand, well, okay, that's actually like a completely different environment, because Coinbase Prime, it's actually built for institutions, and we are talking hedge funds, asset managers, corporate money, and players who don't really care about short-term price swings. They use Coinbase Prime because it gives them deep liquidity, OTC services, and also secure long-term custody. So when we see about 170,000 QNT token being moved from regular Coinbase to Coinbase Prime, this is not a retail move. I think we can absolutely guarantee that. This, my friends, is the kind of transfer that usually comes from a larger entity preparing to hold the asset quietly as opposed to trading it. And that, my friends, is why it matters. You see, institutions don't really move funds into Prime to flip them next week. No, they store their assets there for long periods of time, and that removes a chunk of potential selling pressure from the market, which is really nice. Also, based on what we are seeing at the moment, I think it is very much fair to argue that the supply is actually drying up quite a bit. And when it does, and at the same time, we are seeing let's say maybe a steady demand, or maybe, who knows, maybe even to a degree an increase in demand, well, that can essentially set the stage for a supply shock. Whatever we are seeing here, in my view, is basically the kind of move that usually actually happens before a bigger trend shift. And this, in my view, looks very similar to accumulation patterns that we have seen in other projects so many times. And the most clear one, which we are going to talk about it in a bit, is actually XRP. I literally remember that before we got that massive pump from, I think it was 50 cents to about $2.5, right around the lows, I actually made a video about XRP. And I talked about how whales in just those last couple of days before that massive pump were actually buying an insane amount of XRP. And the result, well, I think we got something like a 500 to 700% move on the upside. So you know what, maybe something like that is also going to happen to QNT as well, especially because when it comes to patterns, I think Quant's chart is actually looking very similar to what we had in XRP back in the day, and we are going to talk about in a couple of minutes. But before that, let's also talk about another important point, and I would say one of the strongest signals in these tweets from Mine Crypto, and it's actually the behavior of these new private wallets. You see, they are holding millions of dollars in Quant token, but they have 0 Ethereum in them. Okay, this is really important because for an ERC20 token like QNT, that detail actually matters quite a bit, since if you want to move QNT out of any wallet, you need Ethereum for gas fees. So when somebody sets off a wallet, fills it with an astronomical amount of QNT and keeps the Ethereum balance at exactly 0, I think it means that they are actually not planning to touch those tokens anytime soon. This, my friends, is a classic receive-only vault setup, and institutions actually do this all the time. They create a secure address, sends asset into it, and actually purposely avoid funding it with Ethereum. And if somebody somehow managed to have access to that wallet, well, since they don't really have Ethereum in them, they wouldn't really be able to move anything without gas. And this tactic essentially acts as a security layer. But to you and me, this is definitely a very important sign indicating, yep, a lot of people and whales and institutions are accumulating QNT right around the lows big time. So question, what does all of these tell us? It's actually quite simple. You see, these coins have been removed from active supply. They are not being positioned for trading. They are being parked for the long term. And this, again, I'm going to say it like we talked about at the beginning of the video, this isn't really normal bear market behavior, okay? This stuff usually happens before some insane moves. And I'm actually going to, in today's video, argue even in the recent move on the upside in Quant, which I think we got to somewhere around $93, maybe there were actually some manipulation going on. We are going to talk about that in a minute. But before that, let's also talk about the scale of these movements, because the numbers are kind of huge compared to QNT's tiny supply. You see, now we are going to speculate a little bit and talk about the concept of supply shock. And I want you to fully understand this may not necessarily play out, but it's definitely fun to speculate. So, you know, why not? You see, QNT actually has, I think, about 14.5 million tokens in total. And at the moment, I think we are having, in terms of circulating supply, about, was it 12.5 million, something like that. And in just a few hours, again, like we talked about it, these tweets from Mine Crypto shows that more than 350,000 token moved to either cold storage or institutional custody. And that is, I think, about, let's say, 2.5–3% of the entire circulating supply disappearing from the market almost instantly, and with an asset as scarce as QNT, since again, the total supply is absolutely 100% capped at about 14.5 million. Well, that kind of removal actually matters, because when supply dries up, even just a couple of percent, and in this case, we are talking about 3%, the market eventually has to adjust. I think we can all agree on that. And let's just assume that demand is going to hold steady, maybe even increase. Well, in that case, the price has to move up until it finds sellers again. And that's like literally how a supply shock forms. I'm not going to say right now, maybe tomorrow, maybe 2 days from now, we are going to have a supply shock situation. But based on these types of behaviors, I think we can safely assume that, yep, we are actually on that direction. So in conclusion for this part, I think we can all safely say none of this looks like retail traders chasing hype. This is looking like a structured accumulation from much bigger players, and they bought the tokens quietly without really a whole lot of people paying attention. And the thing that I really believe worth paying attention to is this: why are they all of a sudden buying so much so fast? Do they expect the price to go up in the short term, maybe in the next month or two, since this is literally that period of time where a lot of altcoins do actually have a habit of outperforming BTC. If they do expect a massive price jump, well, then that means, yep, exciting times are definitely ahead for QNT. So overall, I think this is definitely some interesting stuff to pay attention to. And again, it seems like that we are actually on track for some beautiful, lovely price action. Now, let's go on the live chart and see what is going on. And first things first, I think we should talk about the similarities between QNT's chart and XRP's one. And in Quant, as you can see, for about 4 long years, we just have been consolidating. And I do think, since we talked about it before, but if you're a new viewer, you should know that one way or the other, in my view, this is a triangle structure. And even if you do not care about Helios waves and technical analysis, just know this: for 4 years, the price has just been getting compressed more and more, meaning on one hand, essentially you are having lower highs, on the other, you are having higher lows. This, my friends, is like compressing a spring. At one point, this is actually going to explode. But the question is it going to explode on the upside, or maybe we are just going to break through all these important supports and get a massive move down in order to basically go to zero? Based on my experience and based on the fundamentals of QNT, I'm going to argue there's like a very high chance actually that this thing is going to have a massive breakout. And when that happens, I'm not going to say like I guarantee it, but I'm actually quite confident that it is going to be almost like instant breakout. And I don't really think that it's actually going to provide a whole lot of buying opportunities. So if you are thinking about investing, maybe these prices are actually quite ideal, because again, it's very important to understand that in this period of time, a lot of altcoins are, in my view, going to outperform BTC, but definitely not all of them. Okay, it's very important to understand. I don't really think that we are going to get into a situation where a lot of meme coins, for example, are going to go up as well. No, only coins with solid fundamentals, and that is one very important reason for why I like QNT so much, besides of course the technical analysis in here. Now let's go on XRP's price chart and just hide everything. As you can see, in XRP we basically had a similar situation, meaning on one hand, since 2018 to about 2024, we had a set of lower highs. On the other hand, in here, we had a set of higher lows. And what do you know? Yup, this was also an ABCDE, a triangle structure. And what happened? We got like an instant move on the upside. And by the way, I forgot to tell you this. You see, it was, I think, literally at these 2 weekly candlesticks where I made that video and I said, yeah, look, a lot of whales are actually buying XRP despite the price going down big time. And a couple of weeks later, we literally saw the result. And let's just actually real quick measure this move up from this point to about here. This was about a 500% move in about, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks, which is really nice. And if in Quant we are going to have something like that, that means, yeah, maybe in about a month or so, we are going to be at all-time highs. Can this happen? I think so, yes. Will it happen though? I think we should say that there isn't any certainty in the market at any given moment. We are only talking about different possibilities, but based on what I'm saying, I think it is actually quite likely for us to get a massive breakout in here. Now, let's zoom in more and see what is going on in terms of candlestick analysis, because this is actually quite important. You see, about, let's say, 3 weeks ago, we got this candle right in here, this green one. And to me, this suggests, since we are having lower and upper shadows basically in equal size, there was actually a balance between bears and bulls. But In the next candle, we actually got a bit of a bearish candlestick, and this is called a shooting star. And since the upper shadow is quite large, we are going to argue that this is actually a bit of a bearish pattern, suggesting we are getting a move down. However, pay attention to what happened in the next candlestick. Sure, we did get a move down, and in fact, from the closing point about $81, this was about, let's say, like a 15% move on the downside. However, by the end of the week, we actually got a bit of a move on the upside, and this candle overall wasn't really as strong as it was supposed to be. So to me, this suggests that, yep, there was absolutely a balance between bears and bulls, but bears took charge a little bit. However, right around the lows, bulls came back. And if this is really, really the key, if the current candlestick is going to actually be something like this, maybe like with a big body and a green candlestick, and maybe we're going to close that somewhere around, let's say, the $91 area, then in the next weekly candle, you can actually expect some great move on the upside, because this is literally telling you, look, bears tried, they didn't really have a whole lot of power, and now it is time for bulls to show up. Okay, you just have to see a big candlestick with a fantastic green body in order for you to be much more bullish than you already are. Now let's go on maybe 30-minute time frame and see what is going on in this area. Let's actually go on QNT USDT, since I think the last time that we were on, yep, okay, there we go, we were absolutely on this. So the idea was that maybe this is 5-wave up followed by a correction down, and I was really hoping that the end of our correction would be right in here, but we also said, yeah, you know what, as long as we're not actually getting a bit of a move on the upside in order to at least take this high and mainly this thing, I think we need to actually expect a bit of a continuation of the move on the downside, and we got that. But pay attention, what happened in this phase down in Quant right in here, we haven't at least still taken the lowest low down here about $68.7, meaning what? I think we can still assume that this might be hopefully 5 up into 1 correction for wave 2, and then like a great move up into wave 3, 4, 5. And one of you guys on Twitter said maybe this is going to be the start of the explosion phase, and you know what, maybe it is going to be, but right now, I think it's just a little bit too soon to be completely bullish, since in Bitcoin, I think we may end up going down a little bit. And if we do so, well, maybe in Quant, we are going to witness some moves on the downside like this. If we get this, do not worry, that's just part of the process. On the other hand, if in the next, let's say, 48 to 72 hours, you see like an insane jump in order to take all the highs, okay, that is going to be like a bit of a different story. And at that point, I think we have to talk about the explosion phase happening currently with like a whole lot more confidence. But for now, again, just to manage our expectations, I think we need to expect some more consolidations. And the thing that you want to remember is this: one way or the other, in the mid to long term, the price action looks absolutely beautiful. I do think this is a 4-year consolidation pattern, and there's like a very high chance we are going to get a break out of here. And the fact that around the lows, a lot of whales and institutions are also buying the dip in an astronomical amount, definitely, in my view, supports the bullish thesis. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in Quant's price chart. Anyway, if you found any value in my content, I would really appreciate if you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter. And if you want more, maybe you want a complete analysis for your own specific crypto, or maybe you want to learn some decent TA in order to be able to make good money in the markets, you can become a member and ask me anything you want. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time. Goodbye.